It's a weekend recap here on Locked On Hornets. A lot of good things to take away, especially Miles Bridges' performance. A huge block, a 46-point game for Miles. Crazy weekend for the Hornets. We'll get to all of it today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, Locked On NBA every weekday with Matt Moore and Hayes. And I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We always appreciate FanDuel. And last but not least, there is a new Locked On Hornets newsletter. It's still new. We've established that very well. You can go to LockedOnDaily.com to start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Good stuff to talk about this weekend, Doug. It's been a little bit. We went 1-1 over the weekend, but we'll take it, especially if that loss comes against the best team in the NBA, and the Hornets almost got the darn win against the Cleveland Cavaliers. On Friday night, they lost at home to Cleveland, 118-117, but then, second night of a back-to-back, they beat Brooklyn at home, 105-102. So if you got out to the Spectrum Center, then you got some good basketball as an in-person attendee with these games, which is great. Like, they've been needing to give the fans something to cheer for. The fans had a lot to cheer for over the weekend. We got to start with Miles. Whatever game you want to choose, honestly, we've given him a lot of praise for the effort, Doug. We've given him praise for execution on a decent amount of games, but it's been more so of the effort all year long, and then we just put the cherry on top once he has the really nice box score. Well, he had a couple of nice box scores this weekend, and he also had the game-winning play against Brooklyn when he helped and blocked the shot of Cam Thomas on that last second go-ahead shot attempt from Cam. No, thank you. The Hornets will split the weekend. I'll let you start wherever you want to with Miles, because I know we need to start with him. You could just choose anything you want to, really. He gave us so many good things to discuss.
The things that I'm noticing with Miles Bridges lately is just the variety of types of offensive looks that he's throwing at teams and how he's mixing them up. It doesn't seem like he's settling for one particular kind of shot. Like he can get it. He's getting his three off the bounce. He's waiting for good catch and shoot opportunities. He's taking guys to the rack. He's pulling up short and hitting guys with a little floater, with a little push shot. He's doing it from the post up sometimes. Like, there's so much that he can do offensively, and the way he's mixing it up, he's constantly keeping defenses off balance, and that's how you get 46 points against a Cleveland team with a good defense. And then defensively, obviously, the highlight play was the block on Cam Thomas, and shout out Damian Baugh for letting Cam Thomas get free on that last look, because there was such a wide gulf for Cam Thomas to make a play in. He just couldn't resist it. He's too good of a offensive shot maker. It was just too good to resist, and so he goes into that space, and instead of kicking out, he goes for the shot, and Miles knew that too, right? Miles saw that look in Cam Thomas's eye and was like, all right, I got this guy. I know he's about to shoot. But the athleticism to get up and make that block, that's obviously the highlight. But the other thing that I noticed is his defense on Evan Mobley against Cleveland. Like, if you go back to that game, Evan Mobley hit some tough shots late over Miles, but a lot of Evan Mobley's offense, which I believe he only scored 19 points in this game. I say only because remember the last game that they played against the Cavaliers, Evan Mobley had like a 40-piece and put up a ton in the first half against Mark Williams. We hit Miles on him this time, and he just harassed him. Most of Evan's offense in this game came against Nurkic, but he chased around Evan Mobley, made him sweat, made him work, and it was just a great defensive game, great defensive weekend from Miles Bridges. And you're muted.
Can't believe I'm muted. Don't know. That's a rookie mute. That's a rookie mute.
That's a fine, is what it is.
That is a fine. It's a rookie mute.
That's a $5 fine. We do $1 for phlegm. I think it's got to be $5 for a mute.
Well, especially because I wasn't on the tab, and then it took me a while to unmute my mic as well. So that was a complete disaster of a Monday morning here.
It's $1 a second.
I thought it was going well, to be honest with you. I thought I was fluid enough, and now I'm muting my microphone. So even when I am good, I'm not. That's great. No, you go defense, well-deserved. I'm going to go offense with Miles. So 46 points, that's a career high. He scored 45 in a game last year against Toronto. That was his previous career high. So one's up that with 1 point. 32 field goal attempts in this game, which is ridiculous. In that game against Cleveland, that clearly is a career high. And in fact, that's a career high by more than 4 field goals. He took 28 field goal attempts in 2021, 2022. He had 32 in this game against Cleveland. And sometimes that's a joke of a stat. We're like, oh, buddy, you can pass a little bit. No, we don't need you passing. If you're going to get 46, we do not need you passing whatsoever. So you're right. Miles Bridges scoring in a variety of ways. The other thing I'm noticing is this month, which you've only played 5 games in the month of March, he has not shot any less than 6 free throw attempts. So he was, that's not true. Washington, he did. But other than that, he was 6 of 6 against Brooklyn. He was 12 of 13 against Cleveland. He was 4 of 6 against Minnesota. And then he was 9 of 9 against Golden State. And he's shooting 91%. So he's getting to the line a lot. And he's also hitting damn near every single one of his free throws. So not only is it just a nice floor game overall, Doug, but he's also being efficient and getting to the spots, getting to the charity stripe, which is also helping him out quite a bit.
Yeah, and the scoring's balanced, right? You look at that Cleveland game, 21 points in the first half, 25 points in the second half. So he goes 15-6, 14-11. So he was consistently providing offensive production for a team that LaMelo Ball was on the floor, but he didn't have a great game. And so he had just understood the assignment. Like, this is my opportunity. The team needs me to do this, and he came through. And again, just looking at the shot chart, you get 4 shots from him on the left wing. You get 5 shots from him in the right corner, and then everything else is around the rim or just straight up the lane. Like, he's just so good. Straight line driver. Again, whether the defense is ready or not, he can get to the rim, and it's been really fantastic to watch. I mean, he is playing the best basketball of any Charlotte Hornet this season in terms of consistency. The highs, the higher highs have been for LaMelo Ball, the 50-point game, but nobody has been more consistent than Miles Bridges on this team. His last 5 games, it's definitely been the best stretch of basketball through his career. I guess if you wanted to drag that out even longer, you'd go back a few years when he was a fringe all-star candidate. Yeah, that was a much larger sample size, but if you're just talking about smaller sample, still long enough to appreciate what he's doing. That's what he's doing right now, especially just like we talk about with LaMelo, the guys around him. Doug, here was the bench unit in this game against Brooklyn, okay? The bench unit was Taj Gibson, who is maybe the oldest player outside of LeBron in the NBA and is here on the vet min contract. Tijan Salon, we can get to him. We need to talk about his performance over the weekend. But Tijan, clearly a guy that was drafted, not necessarily helping you to win this year. Malachi Flynn, new member of the team as of a week ago. DeQuan Jeffries, who was kind of hey, sure, we'll bring on this salary for you, New York, so you can welcome Karl Anthony Towns. And the last member that got any minutes was Wendell Moore, who signed in mid-February. All of that, Miles Bridges putting all those guys on his back and leading them to victory. And again, no LaMelo in that game against Brooklyn and no Mark Williams, who were supposed to be your original starting 5. Miles needed to do everything, and he did against Brooklyn, and he needed to do everything against Cleveland. Actually got some help from some other guys, and then just still, it's Cleveland. They're going to win 60 games. It's going to be the 4th team in the last decade to win 60 games in the Eastern Conference. And they almost beat him. And Cleveland's free throw disparity was absolutely insane. But Miles is stepping up into a role, Doug, I think we questioned if he could go with last year, where clearly you can't do it, and it's hard. Not many people can. But he was thrust into a very similar position last year, except this year, I think you're starting to see him execute at a higher level than what you saw last year. Well, and you might argue with me on this, but he's starting to look like the player that the Hornets wanted to pay a lot of money before all of the off-court stuff happened. And the question is that a result of the circumstances around the team right now, Or is that something they can count on next season if they try to reload? You bring back Mann, Williams into the lineup and you try to compete again. Can you get this same level of Miles Bridges or whatever level you want from him as a third option, or now are you forced to make him a second option? These are difficult questions that the franchise is now going to have to ask themselves because, he's starting to make a case that like, hey, if you want to win next season, probably a great idea to retain a guy who can drop 40 on a night and is doing things on both ends of the floor at a level that he previously really had not been able to achieve with this consistency.
All right, let's have that conversation. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Let's take a look at the 30,000-foot view and decide what the Hornets are going to do because they have monster questions surrounding important basketball players on this team as it pertains to their future. We'll look at some of those questions coming up next. Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save, thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal that next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off and order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Here are a few ways you can take advantage of this deal. You could have a game day feast after that epic 50-point performance. We almost got there with Miles, almost. Celebrate by ordering wings, pizza, or burgers from your favorite spot, delivered straight to your door. You could have a late night cravings way of celebrating this deal, whether you're staying up watching highlights or just need a midnight snack. Use Dash Pass to grab something delicious while saving big. Plus, you could fuel your watch party. Planning to catch the next game? Order your go-to snacks and meals at a discount and get ready for more high-scoring action. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save when any player scores 50 or more in a game. Dash Pass members get 50% off and order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. More Locked On Hornets ahead. What to do with LaMelo, what to do with Mark Williams, what to do with Miles Bridges. They all have big-time questions surrounding these players, and they're all for very different reasons. Let's look into Miles after the weekend. Doug, if you were to take a look at his numbers throughout the season, in the 49 games that he's played, that's what it is on Cleaning the Glass. It's 49, yeah, that's what he's played. So 49 games Miles has played this year. The numbers, some of them are worse when you compare what he did last season. If you just look at the shooting accuracy overall, and if you go Cleaning the Glass, then this neglects garbage time, so it's not putting that into effect. But effective field goal percentage among all the other forwards in the league, he's only in the 21st percentile at 49.9%. That's down from the 53.3 he was shooting last year. You're looking at 50.9% on twos. That's down from the 52.9% that he shot last year. The 3-point percentage is down. It's not very good at 32%. Getting to the free throw line, hitting all of his free throws. He's always been a good free throw shooter. That's always been the case for Miles, which is nice. But even the accuracy at the rim, the rim percentage isn't as good as it was last year. It's down just 1 percentage point. But in terms of where he is percentile, he's in the 37th percentile among forwards in the league. He was in the 51st percentile among forwards in the league last year. Remember, that was something that we were a little worried about because as you get older and as you're a rim finisher, the idea is that some of the athleticism, it goes away. And we were wondering if that would tick down just a little bit more. And it actually has. Now, the trend line, excuse me, that's another fine. I'm going to be giving you a lot of my money today. When you look at the trend line, Miles is playing better, clearly. Like, he's playing good basketball. So when you talk about Miles' future with this squad, you have to look at role. How much is what he's doing because he needs the basketball in his hands all the time when you have all of these other G Leaguers, all of these other second-year players, all these other guys that don't have any business being in the main role offensively, and he's just executing at this point. Like, guys go through hot stretches all the time. Do you want to sell high on his value where maybe now, like, you could get more today than you could have gotten last week with what Miles is doing? So you have to take that into effect. when LaMelo and Brandon come back, like, can he do the same stuff if Brandon and LaMelo come back? Are you asking him to like do what he's doing at a much smaller sample size? Like these are tough questions. I don't know. What are your thoughts on some of the numbers that we're rolling through here and some of the other ways that we got to figure out if Miles is going to be on the team?
Yeah, look, I mean, these last 10 games, his 3-point percentage has shot up to 37%, 25 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, 4 assists per game. True shooting has been close to 60% over the last 5, 57% the last 10. It's like, it's just, do you want to build around that? Because that Miles Bridges takes 32 attempts, 20, somewhere in between 20, 25, 30 attempts per game. That means you're building around that guy as a number 1, number 2 option. He didn't look nearly, and you're not asking the same things, but he didn't look nearly as comfortable in the role as third option offensively and asking him to do some of those same things defensively. Like he just didn't look as comfortable earlier in the season. And so that's where this becomes difficult, because it's like, if you could guarantee me that Miles Bridges was going to be able to maintain this level of production, then sign me up and let's find sort of a 1A option for him to work. And maybe that's LaMelo. Maybe he gets out of this funk that he's in. But I have a hard time believing that he's going to maintain this. And also I would say this, he's had to play a lot of minutes this season. And one wonders like what the carryover effect of that is going to be next season. Will he be able to maintain the level of health, the level of athleticism? I mean, you saw what happened in Dallas, where they redlined Kyrie Irving and ran up his minutes, and his body couldn't take it. Obviously, Miles is a lot younger. So, maybe at 27, it's not going to be as bad as Kyrie in, closing in on his mid-30s. But I think you have to ask those questions if you're going to ask yourself, are we going to continue down the Miles Bridges road? Because I don't think he's going to be any more valuable this offseason. I don't think he's going to be any more valuable going forward. Even when his contract is expiring, I think having that extra year is going to help them move him rather than hurt them moving him. And so, it's a really difficult position for Jeff Peterson. Well,
and even so, the idea, Doug, look, if we're talking about a team that we want to compete in the Eastern Conference Finals, I don't think Miles is your number 1 guy. Or if we're just trying to take the next step, maybe that's too much, right? You're right. I leapt way too high. So let's just talk about getting a team in Charlotte that competes for a playoff spot and actually competes once they get to that playoff spot. Is Miles the number 1 guy on that kind of roster? I'd say no, but the way Miles is playing right now is really helping you, which is all great. So you could keep him as a role player. Now the question is LaMelo coming back, and when LaMelo kicks to the open shooter and it's Miles Bridges, we've seen him be able to knock it down. I mean, he's not an atrocious 3-point shooter, but we can't help but go back to the one outlier season that he had as a good 3-point shooter overall, right? Because you said it shot way up to 37%.
All right. No, right. It's all relative. That's what I'm saying, because early in the season it was ugly.
Right. So it shot way up to 37%, which is above average and good. Like I would take that every single season for Miles. Hell, I'd take it for LaMelo right now with the way that LaMelo's shooting. I would take 37, especially on the kind of volume LaMelo shoots it. But that's the question. And if he's not going to overall be finishing as well at the rim, and Doug, I guess I don't know as much about the excuses overall for his inaccuracies at the rim compared to what he was doing earlier in his career, because you would think the idea is that they actually can stretch the floor out a little bit with LaMelo and Brandon shooting, but Brandon's been out a while. LaMelo's in and out of the lineup, so that's probably how you justify it, is the fact that these shooters that you do have, they're in and out of the lineup, and you don't have enough shooters outside to supplement space for Miles to be able to operate. So then you got to give him the basketball in some of these post-up situations, and then post-up possessions aren't as efficient as downhill opportunities anyway. So maybe that's how you justify it, except now you got to balance that with him being another year older. Like look, Hornets have really tough decisions on all these guys depending on what direction you want to go. And here's my last question about Miles. LaMelo and Miles Bridges are best friends, and that's well established. If they decide to move on from LaMelo, does Miles still want to be here even after that? And he's always made it apparent that Charlotte stuck by me during my arrest. Charlotte stuck by me when they were moving on from other players when they're trading Terry Rozier and some of these other guys. Charlotte's always stuck by me, and he's given them a ton of effort this year. What does Miles want is a question I haven't really thought of. It's always been about what do the Hornets want, but maybe what Miles wants is going to have to be considered too once we get to the offseason.
A lot of these questions would be easier if LaMelo Ball was playing elite basketball right now and for the rest of the season. These questions would be a little bit easier, but he's not. I mean, he's fouling out of this game against Cleveland with 1:21 to go, and they needed him, and he wasn't there. And that's what I think is making all of this difficult, is things that you thought, things that Jeff Peterson and Schlotkin when they bought the team, and Jeff Peterson when he was hired, and Charles Lee when he was hired as coach, things that they thought were going to be, obviously the injury stuff was always going to be like, I don't know, is he going to be able to stay healthy? That's going to be something that's a little bit questionable. But some of the stuff that's going on with LaMelo's game is something that I think all of them were counting on going well, and it's not going as well. And that's where things get interesting in the offseason.
Yeah, especially with us having this conversation quite a bit. All right, let's move on. One more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
I'll talk about these fouls.
Yeah.
Bees everywhere!
There you go. Doug just kind of stole my tease right there. He just jumped in.
That's a fine. Oh, I'm sorry. Dollar.
It's okay. No, you're right. We're going to talk about LaMelo's fouls. He fouls out for a second straight game, but different ways. He fouls out against Minnesota and Cleveland. We'll get to some of LaMelo's struggles coming up next. LOH. Did you want to do the read too, Doug? Do you want to do FanDuel as well? Or no, you just want me to take care of that? I'll take care of it. That's fine. All right, March Madness is here. FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You could pick your favorites. You might have your eye on a few underdogs this year. FanDuel makes it easy to get back and back them up with spreads, totals, game props. You can stay in on the action with tournament games happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet on. Plus, it's easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple, easy to use. When I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. FanDuel is fantastic like that. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. There you go. Perfect. There you go. That was good. All right. Nice memory. More to come next. That's pretty good.
People are going to think we're mad at each other. See, when stuff like that happens, people are going to think we're mad at each other. That's how comments are going to say they're mad at each other.
Mom and dad are fighting again. No. This was all good. In fact, honestly, that'd be a fun game to see just the percentage. It wouldn't be fun to listen to, but it'd be entertaining for us to see just how much you could get without looking at the copy, how much of the read that you could get correct. So when you hear it, you read it enough, you can start to memorize quite a bit of it. LaMelo's struggles, well documented here recently, Doug. It's not been pretty. The shooting has not been pretty for him. He didn't play in that victory against Brooklyn. He did play in the loss to Cleveland. He was 4 of 13 from the field. He only played 23 minutes. He was 3 of 10 from distance, only got to the foul line with 1 trip, was 2 for 2 from the foul line, 7 assists, only 1 turnover. That's nice. But 6 fouls. 6 fouls for LaMelo. You go back to Minnesota. We discussed it very briefly, but he fouled out against the Timberwolves too, and it was a very different way of fouling out, but he did foul out. This was an issue at the beginning of the season. This was a real issue of being over-aggressive, the take fouls, the frustration fouls of caring way too much. We didn't necessarily see that against Minnesota. How do you feel about the way he fouled out in this game against Cleveland?
Against Minnesota, I excused that foul out because I was like, well, the game was out of hand, and I don't know that was necessarily LaMelo's fault. And it was just like he was taking himself out of the game, essentially. A game that they were not going to really, I don't think, compete too hard in there at the end of the game. And so you go to this Cleveland game, though, and he's struggling from the field. He's frustrated. And it's when he fouls out like this, like he did against Cleveland, there are little things going on. There are issues with he's trying. Reminds me of early in the season when he was trying really hard to be the defender that Charles Lee wants him to be, and he just doesn't have the technique. So the first foul was he couldn't get by, I believe it was Sam Merrill. He couldn't get by Sam Merrill, so he hooks him, whatever. Second one was a bad closeout, it's just bad technique. And he got beat and then had to recover and slap down. The third one, aggressive defense on Garland, off ball. Garland kind of stops from the corner as he's cutting. LaMelo runs into him. I throw that foul away. That foul's fine. The bad fouls were the fourth foul when he slapped down on Mobley in transition. Just no need to do that. And it resulted because Josh Green and LaMelo Ball, no communication between them on who was going to stop the ball. And Evan Mobley, who got the rebound on the other end, just coast into the rim. And instead, look, if you make a mistake like that, just let it go. You just let go of a basket, fine, move on. Instead, he slaps down, he gets his fourth foul. The fifth foul was outrageously bad. So Okoro gets an offensive rebound, and LaMelo runs over and just bulldozes him, just body checks him like it was a hockey game, like it was a Hurricanes game, and he was putting him into the glass. Okoro had already gotten the offensive rebound. There was zero chance LaMelo Ball was going to be able to knock that ball away, and instead he picks up his fifth foul. And then the sixth one, a minute to go, this is a crucial game, and you foul Garland, again recovering because Garland beats you off ball, and you recover, and you hit him, and you force the officials to make the call. And they could have used LaMelo Ball, particularly on that last offensive possession. They could have used someone that could have at least been a decoy and pulled the defense a little bit. Instead, they don't have him. And again, I think two of those fouls, he should have finished that game with 3 or 4 fouls. 2 of those were just outrageously bad and cost him a minute, and you had to watch him on the sideline, not head in his hands, but just head down. Body language looked terrible because he was frustrated that he wasn't part of a game that the Hornets had an opportunity to win.
Our last episode, we talked about whether LaMelo Ball was checking out, and had he checked out and had it started to happen maybe against Golden State to some degree, but maybe it just full blown happened against Minnesota. I thought for the spirit of the conversation, the answer to that question was yes. You were a little reluctant, but understood that we were heading that way. You said he had his bags packed on the other queen bed in the room that he was staying at the hotel is what you said.
Because the rebounding, because he was active on the boards, and Charles Lee mentioned that at the belief pregame against Cleveland, that there are places where he was active, and in this one against Cleveland, he was overactive.
So, no, but I'm glad you brought up Charles Lee's comments, because after that game against Minnesota, where we have the big graphic, LaMelo quitting, question mark, on YouTube. That's the thumbnail. Charles Lee on March 7th.
Who did that? You know what? I'm going to talk to this graphics department about some of the stuff that they're putting on YouTube. Ridiculous. That did not characterize the conversation that we had. And I'm just telling you, I'm going to fire someone in the graphics department.
It's clickbait is what it is, and I don't appreciate it. But after we have that conversation, going into that game against Cleveland, Charles Lee says, quote, LaMelo's energy has been really good the last few games.
That's right.
He's helped on both ends of the floor, seeing him get down in a stance, scrambling, helping rebound. There's been some really positive signs defensively. Offensively, trying to tighten up some turnovers. So here I am.
We're setting the narrative. That's what that was. He was responding to our show. He listens. Hi, Charles. Clearly, we're setting the narrative.
Clearly, but I mean, I think that's a conversation. Look, we had it on air. I don't know how many other places have had it. I don't know what other Hornets platforms or Hornets podcasts. I don't know who else has had that conversation, but I know we had it. I had it on 2 separate platforms. So I do wonder just how much he is trying to speak to the media in defense of his player. I asked Charles Lee to go and just get a technical foul. Go get a tech once LaMelo is getting fouled and nobody's calling for it. I begged for him to stand up, and I think he stood up for LaMelo actually quite a bit at the podium this year, but I was tired of seeing LaMelo get destroyed and seeing people just swipe down on his arm and LaMelo still not get the call. I needed you to get in a ref's face and get a technical so everybody knew what the tone was with you. But I do respect Charles Lee, whether I think he's right or not. I respect Charles Lee going to the podium and still defending his guy in LaMelo. But that happened before the Cleveland game, and I thought that was interesting because, of course, the argument is whether he is giving you all that energy or not. But in this game against Cleveland, I think he did buckle down once more, and maybe the execution wasn't there. The offense, clearly, he's not hitting nearly as many shots as you would like. But I didn't see what I saw against Minnesota. And it seems like you're getting to that as well, even if you're frustrated with how he got the fouls in a very different way.
Oh, yeah. He was.
Yeah.
Well, it's more disturbing when he's trying really hard and it's not working out, because then to me, I think there's a question of like, what's going on there? How long is it going to take for him to become, is it possible for him to become the defender that Charles Lee wants? Is that within his ability, within his skill set? I think anything is possible with LaMelo Ball on the offensive end of the floor. I think we've seen enough. We don't need any more evidence about what LaMelo can do. He's done it in crunch time. He's done it, in really every situation except for postseason situations. That is the one sort of barrier that he would have to cross. But defensively, yeah, there's still a lot of questions about like not his effort, but his ability to do it when he's giving full effort. And here again, we see him with some technique issues that lead to the fourth or fifth foul, because you're fine if a guy is, fouling on help or fouling because he's, trying to make a play. And it's certainly offensively, the hook on Sam Merrill. Look, you're trying to make an offensive play. I'm going to throw that one away. But it's the mental errors, and then it's the errors that result from bad defensive technique or bad defensive communication. Those are the ones that kill you as a coach and as someone watching the game. You're like, oh man, you're our best player. I would rather you just give the bucket up clean. It's 2 points. It's 2 points. I'd just rather you give the bucket up clean so that we can have you when we absolutely need you in the final minute of the game.
All right, rapid fire, because we don't have much time. We can save a Tijon Salon conversation for tomorrow, because I think there's something to talk about with Tijon and some of the shooting lately. But rapid fire stuff. Shout out to Damian Baugh. Got his first start as an NBA player against Brooklyn, even against Cleveland. Doug, Charles Lee's just flat out relying on Damian Baugh minutes. Against Brooklyn, Damian plays 29. Against Cleveland, Damian Baugh plays 26 minutes. He had the sweet finish where in Cleveland late in that game where he extends his arm and then is able to finish around a big guy. There's the one crazy play. I forget who dives for the basketball. I think it's Miles, if I'm not mistaken, but then feeds it to Damian, who is just Johnny on the spot, hits a floater. Came up with some monster buckets against the Cavs. It actually wasn't all just Miles, even though clearly he was the catalyst. Damian gave you something. Again, seems like a Jeff Gem, and Moussa Diabate too against Brooklyn. 37 minutes, 15 rebounds, 16 points, 8 of 12 from the field. A huge shout out to Moussa, which we've been doing all season long. But those are two guys I think in particular deserve some shouts for what they did this weekend.
There's stuff in Ball's game, particularly what you were talking about there, the finishes that look pro level. And I think when you're talking about a guy who's never had any NBA experience and you're plucking him from the G League, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for one or two things that look pro level that then you can build around. And I think that's what we're seeing with Damian Ball. He is not a complete player. His percentages from the field have been low. And in that game against Brooklyn, when he gets the start, he told us post-game that he was rushing his shots. He was nervous. He's a human being. And Miles Bridges and I think Moussa Diabate came over to him and said, "Kid, calm down. Take your
Josh
time."
Okogie. I think Josh Okogie talked to him. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, nice to have veterans on your bench like that.
Right.
And I wish we could have Josh Okogie suiting up again because he was awesome. But told him to slow down, take your time, do what you do. And he did that, particularly late in that Brooklyn game, able to get to the rim and finish very cleanly. So, yeah, I believe in Damian Baugh. I hope they give him a shot to stay long term. And then I would take that take over to Tijon Salon as well. I continue to see things from him. He's actually I don't know that he's a defensive plus, but he's not a defensive minus. And I think some of the numbers would actually back that up. But Tijon Salon is doing some things. He's learning quickly. There's enough for me in this first season to go, I'm good. I think Tijon Salon is going to be a good player. Is he going to be a great player? A lot of steps have to happen before you get there. But I think he's going to be a good player.
Okay. That's for tomorrow. Save it. That's your tease. That's
right.
Another tease from Doug Branson in this podcast. We'll talk a little bit more about Tijon, and we'll recap this. Yeah, we'll recap this game tonight against Miami on the road after a 5-game homestand. They'll play on the road against Miami, so we'll have that recap for you tomorrow. as well. That'll do it. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. Check out Locked On NBA with Matt Moore and Hayes. Doug is hosting that pod as well, and he's writing everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3. Big show today. Panthers free agency starting. So if you care about the Panthers, you're going to want to check us out on WFNZ. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.